Hi, I'm Lori Rozakis. Welcome to Video Aided Instructions Upgrade Your Writing series. This is the second program in the series, Organizing Your Thoughts. There are many different ways that you can organize the ideas that you have for your writing, and here are some of them. You can do an outline, you can use cause and effect, divide and classify, compare and contrast, definition, process analysis, which is a how-to, and chronological order. You're going to select the method that suits your purpose and your audience, which we'll discuss later on in this program. But first, let's start with outlines. Outlines are a fabulous way of creating a skeleton of your paper. They can be used with any essay structure, and they're very quick and easy to make. As a result, they're well suited for any type of writing that you're going to do. They have many advantages. They help you organize your ideas. They help you present your material in a very logical fashion. They help you show the relationship among the different ideas in your writing. They help you construct an ordered overview of your ideas. And they help you define boundaries and groups. As a result, they're one of the handiest ways that you can use as you start to write. But before you write any outline, you have to go back to what you learned in our previous program. First, determine the purpose of your paper. That's why you're writing. Are you explaining, persuading, telling a story, or describing? Because that determines the type of outline that you do. Second, determine the audience for your outline. The audience are the people who will read your paper. It might be your teachers, it might be an admissions committee, it might be your fellow students. It might be all of those people. Third, develop the thesis of your paper. Remember, the thesis is the main idea. So to recap briefly, before you plan and do your outline, you're going to determine your purpose, your audience, and your thesis. This is a basic outline form. Notice you start out with a Roman numeral. That's the capital I or the capital V or the capital X on your keyboard. Follow it by a period and then write first main idea. Notice you've got your first main idea as Roman numeral 1, your second main idea as Roman numeral 2, and then you'd have your third main idea as Roman numeral 3, and so on. Most outlines for a paper that you've got about 45 minutes to an hour to write will have 3 to 4 main ideas. Then you have under your main ideas your reasons or examples. They are denoted by capital letters, capital A, capital B, capital C, and so on. Under your reasons, you have your details. Those have regular numbers, 1, 2, 3, and so on. And those are followed by little a and little b. As you can see, an outline helps you organize your ideas by deciding which ideas are most important and which ideas belong together. Now, as you can see from this, I'm using the classic outline format in this program, but you don't really have to stress about using your Roman numerals and your capital letters, your Arabic numerals, and your lowercase letters. You could do that, a very good outline, by just using a numbered or a bulleted list, as long as it has your subtopics. Just be consistent so that your outline makes sense. However, that being said, it's not a bad idea to learn how to do a classic outline format because it works extremely well when you have large papers to write, especially research and term papers. Many teachers will require you to do a conventional outline with these large papers. So let's discuss the basics of outlining. An outline has a balanced structure that's based on the following 4 principles: parallelism, coordination, subordination, and division. Sounds a little complex, but it's really very, very easy and very, very logical. Parallelism simply means matching form. Think about matching your jacket to your pants. Think about railroad tracks that run parallel or one next to each other. When it comes to writing, you don't match tops and bottoms, you match words, phrases, and sentences. You know what single words are. Those are just one word. Phrases are groups of words that do not have a subject and a verb. And sentences, you understand, are complete thoughts that have subjects and verbs. Here's an example of a single word outline entry. There's two here. The first one is on the process of metamorphosis. That's my main idea. My four smaller ideas are egg, caterpillar, pupa, and adult. Notice each of those is a single word, so they are parallel. At the bottom, I have two words, but they function as one word because they're a unit. 17th century poets, John Donne, George Herbert, Andrew Marvell, Ben Jonson, Robert Herrick, and Richard Lovelace. They're parallel because they're all in the exact same form. Use a single word outline when you don't have a lot of time to outline and you want to jot down ideas quickly. And by writing single words, you can get your ideas down fast. It's also a good idea to use a single word outline initially when you have an extremely complex topic. Because if you can reduce your complex topic to single words, that helps you understand where you're going to go with your topic. If you're having too many words on the page, sometimes you get a little bit lost in your ideas. You can always take those single words and expand them later into phrases or sentences. Now, phrase entries. This particular one has reasons for the Civil War, different economies in the North and South, settlement of new territories, the issue of states' rights, and conflict over slavery. Here, Reasons for the Civil War is my title, and the four entries are my four main ideas. I like this especially because the topic is large and complex, and by getting it to phrases, I can make sure that I understand what ideas I'm going to discuss. Then I have sentence entries. In this instance, I'm writing complete thoughts for each main idea. My title is Destruction of the Plains Indians. Main idea, settlers pushed west, fencing in areas in which the buffalo and the Plains Indians had once roamed freely. Second main idea, the railroads interfered with the buffalo and brought more settlers. Third main idea, the U.S. government made and broke treaties with the Indians, shattering trust. And the last main idea, the U.S. government resettled the Plains Indians on reservations. To recap, I might want to start with a single word outline and perhaps expand it to a phrase outline and maybe even expand it to a sentence outline as I progress. I would never mix the three kinds. You wouldn't have an outline with a couple of words and then maybe a phrase and then a few sentences. They would all be parallel, or they would all be in the exact same form. If you're not sure which kind of outline to use, start with the single word outline and then expand it as you go on. Second is coordination. Coordination means terms of equal significance have comparable number or letter heads, so that main ideas are all denoted by Roman numerals, and then subheads are A's, ones, and so on. So you match your ideas and coordinate them. It helps you make your writing coherent and logical. So going back to one of our previous outlines, we had each stage in metamorphosis. They were all equal because they were coordinated. Subordination means that you are taking some ideas and making them less important than other ideas. Sub means under, as in submarine, underwater. So subordination is you putting some ideas under others. You arrange them from the most general to the least general, or the most general to the specific. The most general are the higher ranking items. The least general are the lowest ranking items. Our first example has faulty subordination. Main idea is types of energy. Well, what I would expect is 4 types of energy. But instead, I get 2 types of energy and 2 qualities. So I see solar energy, which is a type of energy, nuclear energy, which is a type of energy. Then I see dangerous and costly. Those are not types of energy. They are qualities, perhaps, or things that are not so good about these energies. So that is incorrect or faulty subordination. Correct subordination would have types of energy, and then under that, I'd have one type, solar energy. Under that, advantages and disadvantages. And then I would have my second type of energy, nuclear energy. Under that, my advantages and disadvantages. If I wish to continue this outline, I might perhaps have wind energy. Under that, advantages and disadvantages. Fossil fuel energy. And then under that, my advantages and disadvantages. Now I place the most important ideas first and the least important ideas lower down the line. Last quality is division. When you divide something, you cut it into parts. But to divide, you need at least 2 parts because you're taking the whole and you're cutting it in at least half. Thus, every entry in your outline must have at least 2 parts. You can't have a 1 if you don't have a 2. You can't have an A if you don't have a B. Here's an example of faulty division. Roman numeral 1, bicycles. I have an A and a B, but I don't have a 1 and a 2. I have 2 1s. Here's a correct version of this. Roman numeral 1, bicycles. A, types. B, brands. C, uses. D, costs. Now, I can have as many as I want. I can have A, B, C, D, E, F as far as I want, but I must have at least 2 of each entry. If I don't have the second one, I just put it up higher. So I would simply have bicycle types as my Roman numeral 1, bicycle uses as my Roman numeral 2. So now what I would like you to do is to pause the program and place the information regarding the federal government in your study guide in a 5-paragraph outline. When you're finished, come back. As it is written, the material has no method of organization. It's all over the place. So what you've got to do is first find the 3 main ideas. In this case, it's the 3 branches of the government: the executive, the legislative, and the judicial. Write these down as Roman numerals 2, 3, and 4. Because remember, that first Roman numeral is going to be your introduction, and the last Roman numeral is going to be your conclusion. So your 3 main ideas are Roman numeral 2, 3, and 4. After that, find the subtopics for each main heading, your executive, legislative, and judicial. Write down these subtopics as the A and the B under each Roman numeral. Then check your work to make sure that it's logical. Here's my finished outline. My title is the federal government because that's my method of organization. Roman numeral 1 is the introduction, as I mentioned earlier. Roman numeral 2 is the executive branch. Roman numeral 3 is the legislative branch, and Roman numeral 4 is the judicial branch. Roman numeral 5 is my conclusion. Now, I could have arranged 2, 3, and 4 any way that made logical sense to me. I chose to put the executive first, the legislative second, and the judicial third. Returning to the executive branch for the moment, I have my subtopics A and B. A is carries out our laws. B, it's headed by the president. So I started out with A with the function, and then B, I put the person who runs that part of our government. I'm going to parallel this throughout my entire outline. So on Roman numeral 3, the legislative branch, I have A makes laws. Well, that parallels 2A carries out our laws. And then B, you would expect that I would have the person or the people who do that function. And indeed I do. I have comprised of Congress, the Senate, and the House of Representatives. Those are the people who make our laws. Roman numeral 4 is the judicial branch. A is interprets the laws. Well, that parallels 2A, carries out the laws, and 3A makes the laws. B, I have headed by the Supreme Court. Again, parallels 2B, headed by the President, and 3B, comprised of Congress. So to summarize, what I've done is I've found my main ideas, then I found the subtopics for each main idea. I've paralleled those subtopics within the main ideas so that the entire outline makes logical sense. This will make it much easier for me to write my essay and to stay focused on my topic. So now what I would like you to do is to pause the program and try this for yourself. Please make an outline for this topic. Should we have mandatory school uniforms in public schools? That means that all students would have to wear uniforms at all times on school grounds. You can make a word, a phrase, or a sentence outline. Of course, your outline is going to be a little different from mine, but yours will be parallel and have subordination and coordination. When you're finished, please come back. Here is my sample outline. I did a phrase outline for this particular topic. I have Roman numeral 1, 2, 3, and 4 because I'm writing a standard 4-paragraph essay. Roman numeral 1 will always be the introduction. Roman numeral 4, if I have a 4-paragraph, would be conclusion. And then I have my main points. I'm starting out with the opposition, which is the other side. That's Roman numeral 2. Well, uniforms aren't particularly good because A, they eliminate individuality, and B, many students say they feel uncomfortable. My side, I have A, we have better ways to show individuality than wearing our clothing. B, uniforms are quite comfortable. C, uniforms help reduce crime. D, they help eliminate competition. And E, they save money. Let's take a closer look at this for a moment. I've started out with my introduction. Then I have dealt with the opposition to show that they have some valid points, but my points are more valid. So my Roman numeral 2A parallels my Roman numeral 3A. Eliminate individuality, have a better way of showing individuality. My Roman numeral 2B parallels my Roman numeral 3B. Feel uncomfortable, feel comfortable. So now what I've done is I've paralleled my entries and I have shown through them that my point is more valid than the opposition. Now I bring in the other points that I have, which are C, D, and E. C, they reduce crime. D, they eliminate competition. E, they save money. Notice that under C, I have 3 details. I have none under D, and I have 2 under E. That's fine. I'm perfectly parallel because I have at least 2 entries. So under reduced crime, I have 1, there's less clothing theft. 2, there are fewer school intruders because you can distinguish the people there. And 3, you would get rid of the concept of gang colors. Under save money, I have cost less and last longer. Now, you may not know exactly what I mean by gang colors, but I do. And that's okay, because remember, the outline at this stage of the writing process is for my use. And as long as I understand what I'm going to do with the outline, I'm fine with it. If your teacher asks you to make your outline more clear, you might want to expand it at this point into a sentence outline. And that way your teacher will understand exactly where you're going with this. So as you're making your sample outlines, decide if they're for your use only or if they're for an audience to read. And as you're writing, keep your audience in mind to determine how much detail you need to include in this outline. And since, as I said, this outline is only for my use, I've included the amount of detail that I need to express my ideas. But you may need more detail to satisfy your teacher and the requirement of the essay. Now, you can make an outline with virtually every single writing assignment you ever do in your whole life. And all your outline does, as we said, is it creates a skeleton for you to put your ideas on. And as you construct that outline, you want to decide what method of organization you wish to use. So I might decide to write a cause and effect essay that I would then express in an outline. When you do cause and effect, you show the causes, those are your reasons, and you show the effects, those are your results. Causes lead to effects. For example, if you listen in class, you take good notes, you read your textbook, and you study hard, your effects will be that you earn good grades, you're ready for your tests, you learn a lot, and you achieve your goals. When should you use cause and effect? Cause and effect is used primarily when you write expository essays. Those are essays that explain. You learned about exposition in the previous program. You can also use cause and effect when you write persuasive essays. Those are essays that argue a point. You have to have a clear cause and effect relationship to use cause and effect, obviously. The relationship has to be valid. And usually you have to have multiple causes and effects. If there's only one cause and one effect, you're not going to have enough to write your essay on. There has to be several different causes and effects for you to be able to structure an essay. How do you structure cause and effect? Well, you've got several different ways to do it. First of all, you can have all of your causes and then all of your effects. So you would put all your causes in one part of your outline and all your effects in another part of your outline. Or you could do cause, effect, cause, effect, cause, effect, and so on. So each Roman numeral would be a cause and effect. Or you could have cause, then effect, 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 or effect, then cause, 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 depending on how many causes and effects that you have. So when you start to brainstorm, as you learned in a previous program, your ideas, think about how many causes and how many effects you have. If you have an equal number of causes and effects, go with cause, effect, cause, effect, cause, effect. If you have only one cause and multiple effects, go with cause, effect, effect, effect. If you have one effect and many causes, pick effect, cause, cause, cause. So for example, say you're writing a story about how your car or your bicycle or one of your vehicles got damaged in an accident. You have one cause, but then you have many different effects from that. And the effects might be you now have no means of transportation, which means you can't go to your after-school job, which means you can't earn money, which means you can't afford summer camp, and so on. So work out the number of causes and effects, and then pick the method of organization that best suits your material. Regardless of how you structure it, you're going to use transitions to link your ideas together. And we have special transitions just to show cause and effect. These are as a result, since, because, that's an easy one, so, consequently, so that, due to, therefore, if, then, thus, for, and this is how. When you're about to write a cause and effect essay, go back to this program. Review this page and especially these transitions because they help you show cause and effect and they help you straighten out your thinking to make sure that you really are linking cause and effect correctly. If you're not, you create what we call false causality. You attribute cause and effect where they do not exist. For example, you're walking down the street and you find a penny and you pick it up and the rest of the day everything goes your way. And so you work out a cause and effect. Everything went my way because I found the lucky penny. Probably not valid causality. Probably things went your way because you had planned them carefully, because other people helped you achieve your goals, because you had everything set up for success. So make sure that your causality is valid. And you can do that by putting the transitions in and checking if they really do make sense. Did this really lead to that? So now what I would like you to do is to pause the program and to try this yourself. Sort the causes and the effects. Use every topic on this list. Some of these causes can also be used as effects. So you can have them in the cause column and you can have them in the effect column as well. When you're done, come back. Here's how I did it. I started out by making a chart. I put the causes on the left and I put the effects on the right. I did that because the causes lead to the effect. So it made sense to me to put the cause on that side and the effect on this side. Then what I did is I arranged the information in chronological or time order from the first events in the Irish potato famine to the last events. Third, I decided which causes and which effects fit together. So which causes resulted in which effects and which effects sprang from which causes. I thought hard about this and I thought, gee, I better remember that some causes can have multiple effects. And that is the case here. Remember we discussed that. Last, I checked to make sure that my work was logical and made sense to me. Here's how I did it. Irish potato famine, that's my topic, so I put that on top. Causes on my left, effects on my right. Well, I know that potatoes are very nourishing, and since they're so nourishing, this resulted in the Irish depending on the one crop. So potatoes are nourishing became my cause. Dependence on one crop became my effect. Then I knew that the cause was the 1845 potato blight. Well, this resulted in the crops failing because the potato blight killed the potato plants. The failure of the crops is also a cause because that resulted in famine or mass starvation. I put famine back in my causes because famine had many, many effects. Famine resulted in homelessness because since people were starving, they could not work hard. They did not have the means, the energy. There was no way they could make a living. They were starving. Many people died, at least 1 million. The people who were strong enough and who were perhaps lucky enough emigrated. They left Ireland. Many of them came to America. So my effects under famine are homelessness, 1 million people dying, and 1 million people leaving Ireland. So I've sorted my causes and my effects. I've recognized that some effects can also be causes, and I've recognized that some causes have multiple effects. So now what I would like you to do is to pause the program and try it yourself. Outline an essay for this topic. What were the causes and the effects of the Titanic tragedy in 1912? Use cause and effect structure. You might have to do a little bit of research to get the exact causes and the exact effects, and that's okay. For a lot of the papers that you write, you're going to have to do a little bit of research. You can make a word, a phrase, or a sentence outline. Don't worry, your outline will be different from mine. When you're finished, come back. I used a sentence outline here. Roman numeral 1 is Introduction to the Titanic Tragedy. Now, since this outline is for my use, I know that I would mention in Roman numeral 1 briefly that the Titanic hit an iceberg in the North Atlantic in 1912 and sunk. Then I would go into the causes and the effects. Roman numeral 2, causes. A, the Titanic had an insufficient number of lifeboats on board. B, some of the doors were locked between decks. C, poor visibility and weather conditions also contributed to the tragedy. D, the captain of the nearby Californian, which was another ship, made numerous errors in judgment. And E, there was a lack of standardization for distress calls, flares, and so on. Now, what were the effects of this tragedy? Well, over 1,500 people died who could have been saved. I put that first because I thought that was the most important effect of this tragedy. B, as a result of an official inquiry, safety rules were revamped for ocean liners. C, the International Ice Patrol was established. D, ship designs were improved with double hulls and more lifeboats. E, the transatlantic cruising industry faced a significant setback. And then I would conclude about the Titanic tragedy. You can arrange your causes and your effects in different ways, as we talked about. In this particular one, we did all causes and then all effects. But within that organization, how do you arrange your causes and your effects? Well, you can arrange them that one directly leads to another. You can arrange them chronologically from beginning to end, or you can arrange them in order of importance. Most important to least important, or least important to most important. In this instance, I chose to use most important to least important. I thought it was most important that people perished who could have been saved, and least important that the transatlantic cruising industry faced a setback. So that was my choice within my cause and effect structure. Divide and classify is another way of organizing your ideas. When you divide, you separate items from one another. When you classify, you group topics into related categories. So for example, you may decide to divide and classify your clothing. When you divide it, you separate it. When you classify it, you put it into groups according to common features. So you may put all your shirts together, you may put all your pants together, you may organize according to function, or according to color, according to use. These are things I wear often, and these are things I don't wear often. Divide and classify is a form of analysis because you're taking things apart and you're studying each separate part of them. Now, when should you use divide and classify? Divide and classify is very, very helpful and useful for descriptive essays. Those are essays that use the 5 senses. So, for example, you could divide and classify flowers if you were describing them, or vacation spots, because you are describing their different features. Divide and classify is also very useful for expository essays, essays that explain. You have to have or be able to create a clear classification system. And perhaps most important of all, the classification system has to serve a larger purpose than just making a list of topics. So to return for a moment to our idea of classifying your clothing, it would be a pretty boring essay because who would really want to read how you've got your shirt separated from your pants? The method works, but you wouldn't pick it because you don't have a larger purpose to make your writing clear and interesting and to appeal to your audience. How do you structure a divide and classify essay? First, you choose your principle or your basis for your classification system. What is it you're going to use to actually create this system, this analysis? Then you're going to divide the subject into 3 or 4 different groups. You're going to arrange the groups in a logical order, and then you're going to develop each class or group as fully as possible. So, for example, you might take videos or films or movies, and you would divide and classify them according to their functions. You would have educational programs, such as this one. You might have foreign films. You might have comedies. You might have action movies, anime, cartoon movies, and so on. And then you would use that to make a larger point about the kinds of things that viewers need and want. So now what I would like you to do is to pause the program and divide and classify these topics: constitutional monarchy, anarchy, democracy, republic, theocracy, dictatorship. When you're finished, come back. Well, first, you decide on a method of classification. I decided to use forms of government because constitutional monarchy, anarchy, democracy, republic, theocracy, and dictatorship, to me, were all forms of government. Next, I had to decide how to divide them. Well, I divided them whether they had a positive or a negative impression to me. So I made 2 columns, positive on the left and negative on the right. I put constitutional monarchy, democracy, and republic in my positive column. I put constitutional monarchy, theocracy, dictatorship, and anarchy in my negative. Now notice I've got constitutional monarchy in both my positive and my negative column. Well, how can that be? Well, to me, there's both a positive and a negative aspect to a constitutional monarchy. So since I was planning, I decided to put it in both columns. And later on, I could decide how I'm going to deal with it. But I could also have done it another way. I could have done it, let's say, the relative concentration of the power. Two brand new columns. Left-hand column, I would have shared power. Right-hand column, I would have concentrated power. In my shared power, I have constitutional monarchy, democracy, republic, and anarchy. Because for those four forms of government, power is shared. Now, it's shared in different ways, but it is shared nonetheless. Under concentrated power, I have constitutional monarchy, theocracy, and dictatorship. Notice that again, I've got constitutional monarchy in both my columns. Because I'm trying to be more thoughtful, not all black and all white, or one way or the other way. I'm going for different shades of meaning to make my writing more thoughtful and more nuanced. So I've got this plan in place. And as I do a little research and I do a little bit more thinking about it, I might rearrange my columns. Maybe I wouldn't have constitutional monarchy quite the way I have it now. But at this stage, it makes it easier for me to balance my thinking about these different forms of government. I'd like you to try it now. Please pause the program and try it yourself. Outline an essay for this topic. What are some different types of students in your school? Use the divide and classify structure. You can make a word, a phrase, or a sentence outline. Of course, your outline will be different from mine. When you're finished, come back. Here is my sample divide and classify outline. I did a simple word outline here because this particular outline is for my use. I'm not turning it in for a paper, and I know what I want here, so I kept it simple. My introduction, and I would explain that what I did is I divided and classified the student body. I have athletes, brains, and artists. Notice my A's, B's, and C's are completely parallel. I used appearance, traits, and activities for each one. I'm going to make the point here that in a junior high or a high school, you have a very strict social hierarchy based on different social types. So I'm using divide and classify to make a point that a junior high or a high school is a microcosm of a larger society. I'm not merely setting up classes just for the sake of describing different people. I'm making a point about what that means to be a student within the school. In addition to using divide and classify, you can also compare and contrast. When you compare, you show how two people, places, things or ideas are the same. When you contrast, you show how two people, places, things or ideas are different. The key here is two. When you compare and contrast, it's easiest to do two. It's harder to do three. It's even harder to do four. It gets very unwieldy, and you end up with an essay that can really lose your reader. Compare and contrast is very well suited for expository, descriptive, or persuasive essays. It's one of the most useful forms of structure and organization. And as I said before, but I want to say it again, only when you have two things. The two topics have got to belong to the same class. Example, two people, two cars, two places. You don't want to compare things that have absolutely nothing in common or are so similar that they have so much in common and everybody understands it. So one of the keys to a compare-contrast essay is finding just the right things to compare and contrast. Take the time with this to plan very carefully and to pick your topics very carefully. Because if you don't get the topics just right, you're not going to have enough to write about, and you're going to get lost about halfway through. How do you structure compare and contrast? Well, this works out very, very nicely because there's two ways to do it. You can do it point by point or by what I call chunk. When you do point by point, you have topic 1, point 1, point, topic 1, topic 2, point, topic 1, topic 2, point, topic 1, topic 2. For example, if you were going to compare two towns, first you would compare the schools, town A, town B. Then you could compare the tax base, town A, town B. Then you could compare the industry, town A, town B. Then you could compare the recreation facilities, town A, town B. Another way to do it is chunk. You do all of one topic, then all of another topic. So this method, you would do all of town A, schools, taxes, industry, recreation, all of town B, schools, taxes, industry, and recreation. How do you know which one to use? Well, very simple actually. Use point by point when you have the exact same number of points for each side. So if you have 2 on this side, 2 on that side, or 3 on this side, 3 on that side, 4 on this side, 4 on that side, go with your point by point. If you don't have an equal number, let's say you have 2 for here and 4 for there, use your chunk. This will happen all the time when you're doing a persuasive essay, because you don't want equal points necessarily in a persuasive essay. You want fewer points on their side and more points on your side, because if your number of points is equal, you're going to have a hard time proving your point. So you're going to want to find a topic where you've got perhaps 2 points on theirs and 4 on yours. Remember, look back for a second when we did our essay on school uniforms. We had 2 points on their side, 5 points on our side. That made the essay far more persuasive because they did have 2 valid points, but we had 5 valid points. Now, there will be persuasive essays where you will have equal numbers of points. You're just going to have a much harder time proving your point. So use point by point when they're equal. Use chunk when they are unequal. So now what I would like you to do is to pause the program and identify the method of organization in this compare and contrast paragraph. When you're finished, please come back. This paragraph is organized by the chunk structure. And you can tell that because topic 1, we have all the points, and topic 2, we have all the points. We learn all about protons first, and then all about electrons. Look back at that paragraph. It starts off, protons are positively charged particles within the nucleus of an atom. That sentence and the next sentence, the nucleus of an atom, always has at least 1 proton, and all atoms have the same element. For example, all silver atoms have the same number of protons. So the first 2 sentences of the paragraph are all on protons. The last 2 sentences are all on electrons. Electrons, on the other hand, that's my transition, are negatively charged particles that move around the nucleus. An atom may have 1 or more electrons, and this affects the overall charge of that particular atom. So I've got all protons, all electrons, so I've got the chunk method. What I'd like you to do now is to rewrite this paragraph as a point-by-point development. Decide which version you like better and why. Then come back. Here's my version. Protons are positively charged particles within the nucleus of an atom. Electrons, on the other hand, are negatively charged particles that move around the nucleus. So now, rather than all protons and all electrons, I have a sentence about protons and then a sentence about electrons. The nucleus of an atom always has at least one proton, and all atoms of the same element, for example, all silver atoms, have the same number of protons. Well, now I've gone back to protons. An atom may have one or more electrons, and this affects the overall charge of that particular atom. So I've got proton, electron, proton, electron. That tells you that it's point by point. Which version do you like better? Well, that's a matter of personal choice. I personally like the chunk method better in this instance because I think it's clearer to deal all with one and then all with the other. But you may have found the point-by-point method easier because of its alternating structure. What I'd like you to do now is to pause the program and try a compare-contrast outline. Use this topic for your outline. Analyze Greek and Roman architecture to show how they are the same and different. Use compare and contrast. You can make a word, a phrase, or a sentence outline. And your outline will be different from mine, of course. When you're finished, come back. This particular outline, as with some others that we've done, you're probably going to have to do a little bit of research to get some specific details. I did a phrase outline for this particular topic, but I wasn't exactly sure if I wanted to do it point by point or chunk. So what I did is I developed it both ways. And I figured after I had both my outlines made up, I would go back and see which one worked best for my purpose and my audience. Very, very good technique for you to use as well, because sometimes you're not really sure which method of organization will work best. And when you see them both set out in front of you, you can then decide which one you like. So here's my point by point. I started out with my introduction, of course, and my points are materials, columns, important examples, and then, of course, my conclusion. My materials, A, Greek, B, Roman. My columns, A, Greek, B, Roman. My examples, A, Greek, B, Roman, and so on. So I exactly have my parallelism. My heads are completely parallel. Greek, Roman, Greek, Roman, Greek, Roman, point, point, point. Looking at it a little more carefully, materials, the Greeks used marble and limestone. The Romans used brick, stone, and concrete. Okay, I know that's valid, so because I have at least enough that's different that I can compare and contrast. They're not using the same materials. On my columns, the Greeks had Doric, Ionic, and Corinthian. The Romans had the Tuscan order and a composite with some Greek types and an arch. Well, I'm happy with that too, because I again have enough contrast. Important examples, I have the Greeks with the Parthenon, the Erechtheum in Athens. I have the Romans with the Colosseum in Rome and the Pont de Garde in France. Conclusion. Both the Greeks and the Romans paved the way for Byzantine and Romanesque architecture, and both the Greeks and the Romans influenced modern architecture very heavily. That outline works very well. The heads are parallel. I have enough information there to deal with. But just to be sure, I tried to chunk anyway. Introduction, and then Roman numeral 2 is all of Greek architecture. Roman numeral 3 is all of Roman architecture. And then I have under Greek architecture, A, materials, B, columns, C, important examples. Under Roman, A, materials, B, columns, C, important examples. Again, I am completely parallel. Materials, marble and limestone, columns, Doric, onyx, important examples, Parthenon, Erectium, and so on. So I've taken the exact same information from my other outline, but simply put it into a different form. Materials on the Romans, brick, stone, concrete, columns, Tuscan order, composite, Greek types, arch, important examples, and so on. My conclusion is the same as well. Now, which method should I pick? Which one works best? Going back to what we said in the beginning of this program, I'm going to consider my purpose and my audience. If I want to show the sharpest contrasts, I'll probably use the point by point, because that really underscored what I wanted to prove with their similarities and differences. If I wasn't as concerned with showing how similar and different, I would go with the chunk method. And again, you've got transitions that help you link your ideas and create unity and coherence, which you're going to learn about in a future program. To compare, use these transitions. Like, likewise, similarly, in the same way, also, as, just as, and both. Contrast, instead, rather than, unlike, on the other hand, in contrast with, however, and but. You can also define a person, a place, a thing, an idea, a word, and form an essay that way. There are many different methods of definition. There's the structure. You list the characteristics, the parts, or the qualities of the person, place, thing, or idea. You can give examples of it. You can compare and contrast it, divide and classify it, narration, provide an example about it, analyze or describe the process, compare it to similar objects or processes, explain its function or its use, negation, tell what it is not, give the words history, or give synonyms or metaphors. You can, in addition, combine several of these methods, and that works extremely well for many different types of essays. You might want to use a definition briefly in the beginning of another type of essay to make sure that your audience understands the topic before you proceed. When should you use definition? When you're doing expository and persuasive essays. Especially, though, when your essay is centered on an abstract word that has different meanings to different people. For example, words like patriotism or integrity or grace or progress or freedom. This is especially important when the term is inflammatory, when different people will react differently to the term. So you want to make sure that everybody understands how you're approaching the term before you proceed with your essay. You may also want to use this to neutralize any opposition that your audience may have to your term and make sure that you've won them over to your side before you continue with the rest of your essay. It's especially important to use this method of organization, though, when your audience is not likely to understand a key term. So if you've got an important term, for example, like integrity, and your audience isn't likely to understand what you mean, you better define it up front or you're going to lose your entire audience. How should you structure your definition essays? Use your basic 3-paragraph structure. Your introduction, your body, and your conclusion. Begin with a dictionary definition or an attention getter. The dictionary definition of a word is called its denotation. The understood overtone that a word has is called its connotation. Since you'll probably be dealing with connotation, always start with a denotation so that everybody is on the same page. In the body of your essay, define the term using the method or the methods that you've selected. Provide a lot of examples to make sure that your audience understands what it is you're talking about. And in your conclusion, sum up your main points. So for example, if I was going to define the word boycott using its history, I would tell the story of an Irish landlord named Mr. Boycott, Charles Boycott, who decided not to show leniency to his people. So when their crops failed in 1880, rather than lowering their rents, he raised their rents to try to drive them off the land. They responded by banding together and not doing business with Mr. Boycott. They would not sell him their crops. They would not purchase any items from him. Their boycott, as it came to be called, was so successful that he was forced to flee to England. So the term boycott comes from actions of people ganging up against Mr. Boycott. And I would tell that story to explain the history and the meaning of the word. So now what I would like you to do is to pause the program and identify how this definition paragraph is developed. When you're finished, come back. It is developed through the word's history. Looking back at the paragraph, the word comes from the medieval Italian words mal, which means bad, and area, which means air, describing the mist from the swamps around Rome. Since I have the word's history, its origin, I can tell that that is the primary method of development here. I chose this method because I thought it was a very interesting way to tell about the word. Try it yourself. I'd like you to pause the program and make an outline on this topic. What is hope? Use definition structure. You can make a word, a phrase, or a sentence outline. Naturally, your outline will be different from mine. When you're finished, come back. So I'm starting out with an abstract term, hope, that means different things to different people. Your job is to define that term and make it concrete and specific for your audience. Here is my sample outline. I have Roman numeral 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So I chose to go with a 5-paragraph structure, not a 3-paragraph structure, as I explained earlier, because I think hope is such an important and difficult topic to define that I'm going to need 2 more paragraphs to really make my point clear. My attention getter is a quote from an Emily Dickinson poem. Hope is the thing with feathers that perches in the soul and sings the tune without the words and never stops at all. From there, I would go into my thesis statement, my main idea about hope. And then I would give 3 good examples of hope. I probably would work in my dictionary definition in Roman numeral 1b to say this is what the dictionary says, but here's how I look at hope. And then I would have my 3 examples to prove my point. In addition to using definition, you can use process analysis. It's a difficult term, but it's actually quite simple. It just means how to. In these essays, you give directions how to do something. It may be how to do a process, like how to bake a cake, or how to operate a machine, such as a computer, or how something works. And as I said, these are called how-to essays. Remember that, and you'll understand exactly what it is. You can use process analysis most often with expository essays. When you want to explain how to do something, they're always used when you're giving directions. Process analysis essays are structured according to chronological or time order. You list the steps from first to last. You use time order transitions, words like first, second, third, fourth, so on. First, last, next, then, after, before, during, finally, earlier, meanwhile, now, in the morning, in the afternoon, in the evening, in the night, and immediately. You can also number the steps. That works extremely well because that makes the chronology very, very easy to follow. Now, how-to essays are not difficult if your process is linear, if it goes in a straight line from the beginning to the end. For example, how to change a tire. There's a process. You must do things in a very specific order. So you must first, of course, stop your car and get it to the side of the road so you're out of the traffic pattern. But what happens if your process is not linear, if your process is circular, that it just keeps going? For example, circulation of the blood. It never stops. Well, if you've got a circular process, what you do is you break into that process at a logical point. With blood circulation, a logical point is probably with the heart. So you might start at the right ventricle or the left ventricle, break in, follow the blood all the way across the body, and then end. So in effect, what you're doing is taking your circle and opening it and making it into a linear process. So you've got beginning to end. Always write these very, very carefully with a specific audience in mind, because process is very difficult unless you understand your audience. Make sure that you know what they're likely to think. So for example, if you're giving directions, somebody may not know north, south, east, or west. They may not navigate in that fashion. So you might want to say toward New York City, or away from the Golden Gate Bridge, or toward the mountains, or you will see the valley behind you, which is another way of saying north, south, east, and west, but not confusing your audience. Also, it may be necessary to warn your audience about hazards. So you might want to say, for example, don't take Route 73 because they're doing construction. Or you might want to say, do not operate your hairdryer near water. And if you have a hazard, you would put it in the very beginning of the essay so that your audience sees it right up front. What I'd like you to do now is pause the program and try a process outline. Please make an outline for this topic. Explain how to write an essay. Use process analysis structure. You can make a word, a phrase, or a sentence outline, and I expect your outline to be a little bit different from mine. When you're finished, come back. Here's a sentence outline that I made. It's a 5-paragraph essay, and you know that because it's got 5 Roman numerals, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, my introduction. 2, step 1 is brainstorming. 3, step 2 is drafting. 4, step 3 is revising and editing. And then, of course, my conclusion, 5. Notice I used the numbers. I had step 1, step 2, step 3. It makes it easier for my audience to follow, and it's parallel. Under step 1, I have make a list or web, and under B, I have spend 3 to 5 minutes. Recall, I can't have an A without a B, so I have them in pairs. Step 2 is drafting. A is write the essay. B is spend about 20 minutes. On step 3, revising and editing. A is delete any extraneous information. Extraneous means stuff you don't need extra. B, add any missing detail. C, revise any awkward sentences. D, correct errors in spelling, punctuation, grammar, and usage. And E, spend about 20 minutes in this part as well. In addition to all the other methods that we've learned, you can also use chronological order. Chronological, remember chronos means time, has a clear beginning, middle, and end. Usually it has plot, characters, setting, theme, and point of view. And you know from that a chronology, something told this way, is probably going to be a story, and indeed it is. Most often, chronological essays are stories. They go from beginning to middle to end, but you can jump ahead or flash back within that chronology. When you go back, you're using a flashback, and you want to show scenes that break into the story to show earlier actions. When you flash forward, you show a scene that breaks in the story to show a future event. If you've ever read Ethan Frome, for example, or The Jilting of Granny Weatherall, Ethan Frome, the entire novel is a flashback as readers learn what happened to Ethan Frome that caused him to become very badly handicapped. If you've read The Jilting of Granny Weatherall, she's lying on her deathbed and she flashes back to relive her life. And we understand what caused her to become the kind of person that she is. Use chronological order, as we said, when you're writing narratives, those are stories, and also when you want to entertain readers. Chronology is extremely useful to add an anecdote, that's a small story, to a persuasive and expository essay. It makes a great example. Also, chronological order is very good to create interesting topic paragraphs to grab your reader's attention. You can also use them in process analysis essays. There are many cookbooks that have brief anecdotes in them, as the cook explains when he or she made the specific dish. How do you structure your chronological essay? You list the events from start to finish. You make a flow chart. We learned that in the first program, to check that your order is logical and clear. Or you can make a storyboard. And you check that your verbs are in the correct tense. Are you going to tell the story in the present, or are you going to tell the story in the past? You use your time order transitions. You've learned those already, to link your ideas. First, second, third, next, finally, then, in the night, in the morning, and so on. Try it yourself now. Pause the program and make an outline for this topic. Tell a story about a family meal. Use chronological order. You can make a word, a phrase, or a sentence outline. Remember, your outline will probably be different than mine. When you're finished, come back. Unlike our previous outlines, this one will probably be a little bit humorous perhaps, or maybe a little bit sad, because your purpose here is to entertain, not to explain. So when you think about your story, think about a way that you can entertain your readers. Here's my sample outline. Now, in my expository and persuasive outlines, what I normally do is I tell my audience what I'm going to say. Then I say it. Then I summarize what I've just said. That's not the case with chronology, because I don't want to give away my ending at the beginning. So when I'm doing a chronological essay, when I'm doing a story, I want to save that punchline for the end. So, Roman number 1, Mama is cooking sauce for Sunday dinner. Number 2, she sets the sauce and pasta outside to cool it a bit. Roman numeral 3, our kitten is lost. Subtopic, we look for her. Subtopic, we can't find her. Roman numeral 4, we sit down to eat. Now, I have not resolved the issue of where the kitten is. I'm leaving that for the end of my story. Roman numeral 5, we find the kitten sitting in the pasta pot, covered in sauce and eating all the pasta. So what I've done is I've built suspense by saving that punchline for the end. Well, we've come to the end of our program. I hope that you found this instruction helpful and you've learned some things that you can use to take your written communication to the next level. Be sure to join us in the next program in Video-Aided Instructions Upgrade Your Writing series, Overcoming Writer's Block, where you'll learn some easy and effective techniques for overcoming the anxiety that many of us experience when we're given a written assignment. Thanks for watching.
If you or someone you know needs to learn English as a second language, starting from the very beginning, then Video-Aided Instructions Learning English Steps 1, 2, 3 is exactly what you need. This 11-hour, 83-lesson course will teach you how to start using English in your everyday life, at school, and on the job. This developmental program gives you lots of practice in the basics of listening, speaking, reading, and writing in English. Plus, we teach you important vocabulary words in every lesson. It's quick, it's easy, and it really works. Visit us online at videoaidedinstruction.com for more information about learning English Steps 1, 2, 3. Don't let poor English skills stand in the way of your success. Mastering English unlocks a world of opportunities. Let Video-Aided Instruction give you the key.
Even if you're class president, the star of the basketball team, and a nursing home volunteer, you'll probably find a rejection letter in your mailbox if your college admission essay is boring or poorly written. Now you can make your college application stand out from the crowd and end up at the top of the pile with Video-Aided Instructions Writing the Perfect College Admission Essay. From advice on picking a topic to tips for sounding smart, this fun and easy-to-use program will teach you how to turn your admission essay into a showcase that really lets your personality shine through. Writing the perfect college admission essay can help you craft a memorable and impressive personal statement that sparkles with polish and panache.
When you're serious about learning an academic subject or scoring high on a test, there's just one name to know: Video-Aided Instruction. We don't waste your time with goofy skits, corny jokes, or silly sing-alongs. We get right to the point. Real teaching by real teachers. Visit us online at videoaidedinstruction.com to learn more about our exciting line of educational programs. As we say here at Video-Aided Instruction, press play to learn.